It's Mark and Pete.
Hello, and welcome to this week's Colourful Conversation. The topic for today: what drives the passion for fashion? The UK fashion market is a leading industry, well known for its designer labels, right through from the tailor-made suits that are produced in Saville Row, all the way through to Primark on the high street. Interestingly enough, consumers are spending more money shopping online, with clothing and footwear seeing the biggest increases. And the Office of National Statistics, that's the ONS, stated in June of 2014 that the amount of spend on online has accounted for up to 11.3% of all retail spending. That's excluding fuel last time. And going back in time to June 2013, this was at 10.4%. So clothing and footwear saw the biggest year-on-year increase, going up to 20.6% in June 2014, compared with June 2013. So other categories include food, department stores, etc. But fashion is the key here. So the real question, I guess, for my beloved little friend here, Pete, is fashion an indulgence or a necessary part of life?
You can't escape fashion. Fashion is something that always grows up in every culture, every society. There's always a particular thing that is popular to wear, and everyone needs to be seen wearing it. It always seems to grow up. It always seems to be part of life, not just in terms of clothing, of course, but I guess that's the main thing that we mean when we talk about fashion: what you wear, or maybe how you do your hair. Unless you happen to be bald, Mark, then you wouldn't. Then it wouldn't be perhaps such an issue.
Well, I might need to wear a hat.
I need to wear a fashionable hat, or draw. It could be a fashion to draw something amusing on your bald pate. That might be. That might be the next fashion. And in which case, you heard it here first, folks. But I think that fashion isn't a necessary part of life, but it is part of life. So it's something that we can't avoid. We don't need it, but it's there whether we want it or not. So the question is, what is our attitude to it?
Yes, but I suppose the real question is about this passion. And it's quite interesting that a lot of people will buy goods simply because of the label. And although they may need clothing, of course we all need clothing, we need shoes to get about, we need coats for the winter wear, but ultimately some people will only buy a particular garment simply because it has a particular brand. Now, is that right? So effectively, are people spending they need to?
Well, I think that can happen, and does happen, that people will buy an item of clothing or any other goods because it has a particular label on it saying it's made by this manufacturer, and that's the fashionable manufacturer, or that's the one they see as being the one that will make them look better because they've got it. That's true for all sorts of things that you buy, and has been exacerbated to a huge degree by the way that advertising is done and the way that marketing is done. Having seen the importance of the brand in people's mind, a lot of time and energy and intellect and money is spent on getting people to recognise brands. So certain brands are going to be seen as the one to have, and they're not necessarily the best product. No. So you're going to have this problem exacerbated because people are putting so much energy into it. It's the effect of this trying to make sure people identify with the brand, is that they will choose a particular brand, whether or not it's the best product. Now, a joint friend of ours, whose name was also Mark, once took part. Well, he may have done that as well, but he took part in a marketing exercise in which he was asked by a marketing company to give his opinions on certain sweets. And he was asked, which of these sweets would you buy? I believe they were types of mints. And when he gave his opinion, he was then asked, well, what would happen if we changed the price? So they increased the price of his favourite. And he then switched to another one and kept switching between the brands depending on very small price differences. So he was going not just for the cheapest, but there was in his mind a calculation. Okay, this one is better, but at that price, no, that's too much. So I'll go for this one that's worse, which is slightly cheaper. And he was switching between all the brands. And when he finished, he was told that no one in their experience had ever done that before. Usually what they found was people stuck to the brand they liked, and that was it. And you had to increase it to a really high level before they'd turn away from it. And so I think that our little friend Mark is an unusual person in many ways. And in that way, he was in some way immune to the branding or the brand recognition that had been foisted on other people.
Well,
but that's talking about him. But talking about the process of trying to sell things, that has an effect, I think, on most people that they have in their mind, that's the brand that I must have.
Well, interestingly enough, the ONS survey actually almost counters this idea that the consumer would have finance in mind, because as part of the survey, they interviewed men and women, but 41% of those surveyed preferred to buy a few designer items rather than those that are based on cheaper ones. So in actual fact, there is that greater influence. And interestingly, the brands that they cited was that Marks & Spencer's has the biggest market share in the UK, followed then by Next and then Primark.
Yes. So that just underlines the point that both that Mark is a strange person, but also that his view of changing which brand he would buy based on small price increments is unusual. People will like a brand and stick to it. Now, that's sort of drifting away from actually from talking about why do people wear fashionable items, or why do people buy things that are in fashion. It's part of it. The brand recognition is part of it. But it could be that you recognize that brand and you buy it because you associate it, rightly or wrongly, with good quality. Now,
yes.
Here we're not talking about whether it's right or wrong. I would say, well, often that can mean that it's not actually good quality, that you've been that you've been to a certain extent duped into just buying that brand because there could be a better one out there. But, however, when it comes to fashion, what you're saying is that you're going to buy that product because other people need to know that you're wearing that product, and that's it. Whereas with fashion, you're not necessarily you're claiming rather what you seem to be doing is that you're buying something because it looks good, but you're not necessarily doing that. You're buying it because it's got that label on it. Now, here's the conundrum that I'm building up to: the fact that the particular label or designer name is put to it does make it look better to other people. So in a way, you're right to buy that brand.
Yes.
In their minds, you do look better.
Yes, and I can understand that some people will always want to buy a particular brand, expensive or otherwise, simply because they trust that brand, they know that it's quality, they've worn their products over a period of time, and they know that they're good. And also, sometimes that they're in fashion. But often people will buy a particular garment simply because it has a label, and that label is deemed to be in fashion. And I know we can explore this a little bit more, because there is the downside to that. So, for example, in schools, for example, fashion, although children may wear a standard uniform, but there is and has been in the media a lot of concern over how fashion can influence children. For example, you can be ousted if you're not wearing the right pair of training shoes. And that's quite bad, because at the end of the day, a pair of training shoes is just simply there to help you to have comfort, but also perhaps to do sport, but not just simply because you may have a certain logo on the side. And if you don't have that particular brand, you may be seen not to fit in, and that's actually quite bad.
Yes, that is bad. But if you, I agree that that's bad. But in terms of a fashionable item looking good as well, as in, this is the latest fashion. We all have our hair short, so the item we're talking about is actually not a physical item. It's a haircut. So you're all going to have your hair short. Everyone has it short. That's what the fashionable thing is. You have your hair cut short, but someone doesn't. Someone doesn't have their hair cut short because they couldn't afford a haircut, and, they can't find anyone to do it for them, whatever it is. And if they had it done for them, it wouldn't be done well enough. So They can't afford to have a haircut, so they then stand out as being different. They haven't fitted in with the latest fashion. Now, they could then be, in the same way, ostracized because of looking different. They could have decided to have a different haircut, so they're going against fashion, and yet they don't fit in with a particular group. I would say that's just as well, bad rather, not just as well. It's just as bad because what we're doing morally then is inexcusable, differentiating simply by what someone looks like. They look different, therefore they're not part of my club. It's as bad as racism and all the other isms that we hate. It's fashionism.
Yes.
Maybe a bigger actually problem in our society.
Yes. Well, let me give you a slightly more whimsical view on this, because I do follow fashion in the sense that, I certainly want to ensure that I'm wearing quality garments, but I try and avoid just simply having a label for the sake of it. So here's a little poem called The Naked Truth. The smart tie I wear is simply there to fill space around my neck, and when I holler, it squeezes my collar to keep my voice in check. My skin-tight shirt helps me exert a great manly muscly chest. When I bulge my top, the buttons pop, and I look quite distressed. My stripy trousers stop the browsers from looking at my knees. The zip is slack, and it has a knack of falling when I sneeze. So I wear a belt to keep me svelte, wrapped around my waist. When I pull too tight with all my might, my belly cannot be traced. My underwear includes woolly socks, though very itchy on my feet. It quickly shows when I rub my toes by producing excessive heat. In leather shoes I start to snooze, dreaming ways to step and stamp. Then suddenly feeling sends me reeling, leaping round with cramp. It's perfectly normal to dress so formal, of which there's no dispute, but I prefer to dispose of all my clothes and wear my birthday suit.
Yeah, well, yes. Thank you for that, but please don't.
Now, you see, that is fashionable. I mean, there again, why can't we just go out with gay abandon and start wearing nothing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's interesting.
It'd be cheaper.
It'd be cheaper. It's interesting, isn't it, that there were certain standards enforced in society, enforced legally. If you were to walk down the street with no clothing on, this would be seen generally as a bad thing to do. And I believe that's still against the law in Britain.
Correct.
Although I've never been picked up for it. But
No.
if you were to do that, just walk down the street with no clothes on, then you would have problems with people accusing you of I suppose being immoral.
Yes.
But why is that immoral? Why?
Well, I think my point really is essentially it's not to walk down the street naked. It's to walk down the street without being subjected to the whims of fashion. So the point there is that yes, by all means, obviously dress sensibly, dress in a way that's appropriate. But I think that one of the concerns I have is around how much people do spend money on fashion. They can be influenced by the latest pop group that they see wearing a certain set of garments, or it could be an actor or an actress. But I'm going to ask you a question because, interestingly enough, there's been a number of surveys on how much people spend on fashion. Okay. And quite recently, there was a poll that was conducted on British online trade by the company called coveteek.com. And what they did is that they surveyed 1,100 women aged between 30 and 45, and they discovered an average spend per month on clothes, shoes, and accessories. And I would like to ask you, what do you think that average spend is per month?
Per month, okay.
Yes.
Now, let me get this right. It's shoes and accessories, right?
It's clothes, shoes, and accessories.
Yeah, okay. I missed the clothes bit. Okay, so it's a monthly spend. Right. Well, I'm thinking, a pair of shoes could cost over £100, couldn't it? So.
Possibly.
Yeah. So, if you buy a pair of shoes each month, so I'm going to say now. What was the criteria again? Who are these people?
Average per month. Average spend.
Average spend. I'm going to say £1,000.
Well, that's not far off. It's
I'm putting
actually
it out there.
£1,200. Well, now this is the other thing, because that equals the equivalent of about a month's rent for a one-bedroom flat in London. Now,
Yeah.
of course, what it then did was, is over the course of a 50-year adult 50 years,
Oh, wow.
that adds up to a staggering £720,000. Now, of course, obviously not everyone would immediately save that amount, but if you did, that would buy you quite a decent property somewhere.
Yes, when you start to look at how much you're spending, it does give you pause for thought.
Yes.
But I would just to look at the other side of the coin. If you don't spend that money, say you spend none of that money at all, and you just get hand-me-downs and clothes from Oxfam, so virtually none of that money, you're going to look at real estate, probably. Okay, so other people have to look at you. So are you actually being selfish by not spending any of it? You should spend some money, surely, on making yourself look presentable. And also, just think of, say, for example, if you're a woman who has a husband, you may want to spend money in order to wear nice clothes to be attractive for him, or that sort of thing. So there are, I believe, instances and situations in life in which you say, no, look, I need to look right for this, so it's going to cost money. But that's really looking at spending money on looking good, not necessarily on following the latest fashion. No. And that's the distinction I'm trying to tease out here. I'm saying, yep, some of that money will need to be spent, or rather should be spent, ought to be spent, because you have to think about your appearance, not because you simply want to lord it over other people or just follow what other people do, but simply that you're trying to look good for the sake of other people, so that other people will either be attracted to you, or they will see you in the right light. If you work as a businesswoman, you want to look businesslike, so you're going to have to spend money on the clothes in order to be seen in the right way. But then you're not going to change those clothes every month in order to fit in with the latest fashion. No. That's the difference I'm making. If you're a follower of fashion, a close follower of fashion, then you're going to be spending too much money. So I don't think you're going to save all that, but you would save a lot of it if you didn't change your clothes quite so often.
Yes, I concur with the view that you have to spend a certain amount of money to be respectable, to look presentable, and especially in work. Interestingly enough, it's good that you raised that point, because what I've noticed over a period of time, certainly over the last 30 years, there's been a trend where people seem to be less formal in the working environment. So, for example, I certainly know when I started work during the 1980s, it was almost compulsory that you had to wear a tie. And I've certainly continued to do that, and I think that upholds a standard. I think you look smart. We have something today where there is this strange fashion or trend, should we say, to have these dress-down days where you can actually almost wear what you like in the workplace. Now, to me, that is dangerous, because essentially you're sending out a signal to your customers as well as your colleagues that really actually you're not really bothered what you're wearing, and I think that that's poor. So I understand that there is a balance between not overspending, but at the same time is ensuring that you do have that mark of respect.
Yeah, what you see there, what we have an example of fashion, in that the reason that the dress down days are happening, it's really a fashion, isn't it? I mean, I can't see it for another reason. So that's an example of companies following a fashion, not necessarily for a good reason. Because if you think of that just logically, if it's right to wear a certain style of clothing for that company, why does it change on that one day? Why is it different on that one? So that it doesn't seem to make sense to me as a policy for a company.
I completely agree.
But I can see that that's that is an example of a company following fashion, which we see time and time again. I mean, one that's noted particularly at this time of year with the Oscars coming up for best film, etc. The Academy looking at that, they seem to follow fashions in what they will choose as being the best film, and certainly the Hollywood movie industry seems to follow fashions rather than necessarily following, right, this is the best film. You know, it seems to follow fashions. So that's one. I think in many industries they follow a certain fashion. And now I understand the reason that they do that. You see, in that they're thinking if they follow the trend, then at least they're not going to lose. That's the thinking. You're playing safe, going with everyone else, and that may be part of the thinking behind companies following fashion, such as having dress day on Friday. Well, if I don't have it, everyone does it, so I've got to fit in. Otherwise, I won't get employees here, and employees will say, "Oh, that's a terrible company to work for." You know, so you're following the fashion because you're playing it safe.
Yes. I mean, I certainly think that the red carpet of somewhere like Hollywood, you would expect that it would showcase the elite. And I can see that because the designer brands...
in terms of clothing, yes. I think
yes, in terms of clothing. I mean, clearly if an actor or an actress is wearing the latest fashion, showcasing the latest shirt or jacket and so on. So I can see that you want to be associated with the best, and then that certainly makes sense. Also, the other point that I would mention, certainly from a business point of view, is that we can't ignore the fact that the fashion industry does employ a lot of people. And certainly just in the UK alone, there's an estimated 600,000 people that are actually employed in the UK fashion and textiles sector. So that's a significant amount of people, and it contributes an enormous amount of money to the coffers. In actual fact, in Britain's case, it is worth £26 billion to the economy. So that is a very, very sizable amount.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're not saying we're anti-fashion here. We're saying that it's important to put things in perspective and not to be taken over by. The other side to it is to say, well, we've talked about fashion from the point of view of people looking at you, and also with you trying to please other people. But also, fashion can be an expression of a way of expressing yourself. It can be artistic in that sense, in that what you're wearing is fitting in with your personality. You're trying to express your personality by wearing certain clothes.
Yes.
Now, again, there's a question mark over that, even though I've just said it. Is that right? In that, is it actually fashion? Because a fashion is something that's the latest trend, isn't it? So,
yes.
Are you actually, if you're wearing clothes simply to express yourself, you're not following the fashion, but you could be setting the fashion.
Yes.
Not a follower of fashion, but someone who leads the way with new fashion, and therefore you could be spending more money on clothes. I'm thinking of there's a singer called Pokey Lafarge who has his clothes handmade. He has to have them made for him. I hope he listens to this show, but I'm afraid I have to say he looks ridiculous. But he could be setting the trend. What he's doing is he has clothes made in the style, Americana style, like old American people used to wear during the early 20th century. So he has to have them made today. So he is doing that to express himself. And as a singer, I guess he has people looking at him. So he's making a statement. He's spending more on the clothes because he's making this statement. And yet they look rubbish. But that's just my opinion. It could be that for other people, they follow him. So the economic idea isn't always the answer. It isn't that you should wear the cheapest clothes, but simply that you should look on your motivation. Why am I wearing these clothes? Am I being manipulated? Am I just following what other people do just for the sake of it? So am I wasting the money? It's not necessarily a waste of money to do something that you enjoy. If it's you expressing yourself and you enjoy wearing a particular style of clothes, then you should do it if you can afford it.
Well, I'm going to openly admit that one of my passions for fashion is actually wearing ties. And I mentioned about wearing this at work. And I can tell you this actually stems all the way back to the 1960s when even at school, I was encouraged to wear a tie, albeit at those times it was a nice, lovely paisley pattern tie, which of course would be almost unacceptable today. But the reason I've sort of upheld this standard, certainly at work, is that I do believe that you look formal, but at the same time, I think with the right cut, the right style, the right fabric, you can actually look quite trendy, and I think it's almost timeless. So that's my input on the passion for fashion. What's yours?
Well, I had a similar experience with ties, in that there's something in my mind as well, and about, oh yes, a tie looks smart. If you're wearing a tie, you're having a higher standard. And I used to work as pastor of a church where you expected to wear a clerical collar, and which for listeners who don't know, is sort of a white band around your neck. You can't wear a tie with it; it's instead of a tie. And I was expected to wear this to work, but then one day I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll just go in wearing something else. I wore a shirt and tie, and when I was asked, why aren't you wearing the clerical collar, I said, we're just upping the standards here, and that was accepted. It was interesting. That was accepted. That's some time ago now. We're talking over a decade ago. I said, well, we're just upping the standards because I was wearing a tie rather than what I was meant to be wearing. And as soon as if I'd been wearing, say, a T-shirt and jeans or something, then rather than a suit and tie, that wouldn't have been accepted.
No.
So there are certain, I agree, classic styles of clothes that seem to say a particular something. Like one is wearing jeans. If you're wearing jeans, that's the idea of wearing jeans as not workwear, I suppose, has been around for 50 years now or something like that.
Yeah.
But they just never seem to go away. And there's sort of an idea that I'm wearing jeans, therefore I'm casual and relaxed. But I'm sort of outdoorsy as well, because there's that sort of idea. Yeah.
There is something else. The collar, as you say, the clerical collar.
Yeah.
Fashion plays a part because here it actually denotes a particular profession. So clearly in your case, where you were wearing the collar, somebody would immediately identify you and associate you with the clergy. So it does have also a label attached to a particular industry.
Yeah, that has that was in a way functional wearing of clothes. The clothes were a uniform. That was or a badge saying who I was. And it was important to wear it in certain situations. I stopped wearing it leading the church services because there everyone knew who I was. But when I was out and about in the community, I used to wear the clerical collar because then people didn't necessarily know me. But even there, fashions come to play.
It's like business. Business no longer. One time, you typically saw a businessman wearing a bowler hat or a suit and carrying an umbrella.
Yeah, fashions change. And in the same way, many clergy in the Church of England, the church that I'm part of, where traditionally they have worn something distinctive like a collar, now they don't. So why is it that's become a way of identifying someone? Well, because human beings look on the appearance. I mean, we can't get away from that fact. And I don't think it's a problem in itself. You just need to remember that what's important is your motivation. What's important is your heart. Yes. And it occurs to me that there's a great verse in the Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. I was just looking it up previously, and it says, but the Lord said to Samuel, Samuel's a prophet who was trying to choose the next king of Israel, or rather, he was representing God in choosing the next king of Israel. And the Lord said to Samuel in this verse, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. I think if we take that principle, that it's the heart, it's motivation, ethics, morality, our character that's important. Though, yes, we can indulge in fashion to a certain extent, but our emphasis should always be on doing right and loving other people and on not judging other people by their appearance.
Yes, indeed. And that's a good way to end. And so, listeners, we would like to hear your views on what drives your passion for fashion. So join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.